Ladies and gentlemen, my clock shows 1:24, but in the interest of time, we're going to go ahead and begin. We are here to discuss the Criminal Justice Improvement Committee breakout information for your grant award. My name is Keith Bugner. I'm part of the Criminal Justice team. The team is made up of Navin Puri, who's our supervisor, Keon Ash, who's the lead technician, and myself and Matt Stewart, who are the grant planners / grant administrators. So you'll talk to us a lot. Slide, please. So we're going to talk, first thing we're going to talk about is how to know when your grant is opening and what does that mean to you. So because we don't always get the grants open right in October, you will get a letter from me if I'm your grantor, and it will look something like this. It will always come in email. And this is pretty much your introduction that tells you everything you need to know. The stuff in red is really kind of important. It talks about how to find the GCC home page, which uses a friendly URL of ncdps.gov/GCC. There's no need for you to learn 256 characters when these will do the job. It also talks about how to get you to EBS and the EBS training guide, which we've talked about again a couple of times today, but it doesn't hurt to make sure that you've got your very own copy. We're also going to give you a checklist that Matt and I would use to review your reimbursements. They're not completely like the ones that you would see on the web page, so this will give you details in what will and will not fly when you submit a reimbursement. You're also going to get some information about your reports. We will do that also this afternoon. Now, the first things you're going to want to do, we're going to send you some information and some sheets to fill out for us as a sub-recipient self-assessment. And we're going to talk to you about your experience, amount of time that you've done grant administration, things of that nature. Give yourself time to look at your budget. Because the fact is that some things may have changed and you're going to want to do something about that. Good, change the thought again. Again, we talked about these URLs. I'm not going to go over them again, but you've seen everything that we had to talk about that. We will talk about the CJI flavor of a PMT this afternoon because it is different than everybody else's. So we talked about, I talked about real quickly the self-assessment and do your budget reviews. We've talked again all this morning about the need to do a budget change more often than not when you start. It's very important as we go through the year that you get to that as soon as you know that you have a need. It's easier to justify a budget adjustment if you tell me about it when you find the need, other than, well, we're coming up in September and I didn't tell you about something in March. We will have to have a discussion about that. And at the same time as you're waiting on me, the time to start your procurement process is now. It's really good. You have to follow your own agency's procurement process in terms of procedures and documentation, what you call a piece of equipment, what you do not. Generally, for procurements in and above $10,000, we must have 3 informal bids or quotes. Now, or sole source provider request. What do we mean by a quote? Usually when you have a quote, it's your formal bids that entail a whole bunch of paperwork. We're not looking for that. If you're trying to buy laptops, for lack of a better phrase, you need to be judging yourself against the same similar make and model, i.e. same amount of memory, same amount of processors, same amount of bits and pieces and stuff like that. And then you would look to see whether you can get it from Best Buy, get it from Dell online, individual guy down the street. All we're looking for is that you did the due diligence. Now, if your procurement policy says you have to have formal bids and then it tells all the ribbons and bows, and then you have to let us know that you did that. Now, if you want to use a sole source request, we've discussed that. The page is on the web page. Fill that out, send it to me, we'll sign it, and or talk to you about it and go on from there. Now, some people try to do procurements below 10,000 in what we call split procurement. Folks, that's not a good idea. That is specifically prohibited by federal regulations, and we can figure it out. Reimbursement requests are due once the funds have been obligated, you've received your items, turn them in, and send us the documentation. And next step I got to see here. We're going to talk about reports. Next page. We've talked about that. You've heard it today. PMT reports, they're quarterly. DOJ requires them. You have to do them all. So if we don't get your grant open until October or in January, you're still going to have to do the previous PMT, because it's entirely possible you will have gotten some work done that would be justifiable and reimbursable as we go along. So you have to report what you've done. Every quarter, we're going to ask you for an update on how you've utilized your funds. What that means is, have you obligated any of your funds during the last quarter? And we have to do it every quarter for you. And then at the end of the grant, annual progress report, which is a summary of everything that has been done. Have you met your goals? Have you achieved what you wanted to achieve, or was there something else that could have been done? At this point, we're going to talk about reimbursements. I'm going to turn it over to Matt Stewart. He's one of our other grant administrators and planners, and he's going to tell you the ins and outs of actually getting money back from us.
Well, good afternoon. As Keith just said, my name is Matt Stewart. I'm another grant administrator and planner here at GCC, and I will be discussing reimbursement requests and those activities and items you've got to do in order to get reimbursed. One of the first things you need to be aware of when submitting a reimbursement request is, depending on what actually you're asking reimbursement for, there are some local policies that do pertain. With regard to Byrne JAG reimbursements, you're required to supply GCC with about 4 different policies, and those can include the body armor wear policy, the body dash cam policy, use of force policy, and then there's one other one listed here. You can either submit those with each reimbursement request, or if you go to your general agreement page in EBS, you can upload those in the attachment section there and then not have to worry about it each time you submit. When you submit a reimbursement request, some of the documentation requirements for the Byrne JAG program are different than some of our other programs. One of the things we require is photos of the purchased assets. So if you purchased equipment, tasers, body-worn cameras, those types of things, you do need to submit photos. What is important with the photos, it's not just a photo of the product itself, but we like to see the serial numbers, and that's one thing we really have to have documented. Along with the photos, we also ask that you submit what was talked about earlier today, a GCC property control record is another requirement as a documented item. We do ask that with your submittal that you submit cover sheets. That is also important because we've got to have it documented that the federal and the state debarment checks have been done. So we do need you to submit a cover sheet. Additionally, we ask that you submit a purchase order. And when I say purchase order, to avoid any confusion, it needs to be the purchase order that was issued by your agency. So if you have a purchasing section, finance department, and they issue the purchase order, we need to have that as well so that we can document that the procurement was made within what we call the period of performance, the time period of your grant. Other items that we require is obviously a copy of the vendor's invoice and proof of payment. As was discussed earlier in a presentation this morning, That proof of payment can include the front and back of the check that's been processed by the bank, or it can include a copy of an AP statement showing where the funds cleared accounts. Okay. We also can send you a copy of this checklist if you require it. If you make a request to us, we would be glad to send you a copy of that. If we can go to the next slide.
Mm-hmm.
Another important item with your Byrne JAG projects is with a lot of projects, our subrecipients are required to hire a consultant. Therefore, they're required to go under contract. There are some limitations with that. The first one being that you hire a consultant, it should not be someone on your staff at your department. It should be a third party that you are going under contract with. There are also some salary limits. The contractor's salary cannot exceed $81.25 an hour, and also cannot exceed $650 per day. When that contract is drawn up, the duties that the consultant will be performing must be clearly stated in that contract. With these consultant contracts, pre-approval from GCC is a must. So before the consultant and the local jurisdiction sign and execute that contract, it does need to be approved ahead of time by your grant administrator. GCC also has what we call a pre-contract request form that we require to be approved along with that as well. The consultant also is required to show their work performed. One of the things we require from the consultant is that for every one of their employees that works as part of the contract, that they complete time and activity sheets every month. One thing I will say is if time and activity sheets prove to be cumbersome, if the consultant and the subrecipient can figure out a better way for the consultant to document their time and their deliverables, then we can take an acceptable alternative. That includes my portion of the presentation. I'm now going to turn it over to Navin Puri, who is going to discuss PMT reports in greater detail.
Good afternoon. This is Navin Puri, and I'm going to go through some slides regarding the PMT report. Luckily or unluckily for everybody on the line right now, you've seen a little bit of this material earlier because we use similar systems, whether it's OVC, VOCA, VAWA money, or JAG money. They use a very similar platform because they both have PMT reports that are done on the federal system. So I'm just going to go through the parts that would apply, for the JAG grantees. These are required, as we've indicated already. Once you've complete the report, remember it's in the federal system, so it's not on our current EBS system. You're going to basically make a PDF copy of it and upload it in there under your project so it can be reviewed by the grant administrators. And remember, the reason we do this is because at the end of every quarter, we, being the SAA, have to compile a massive report about every grantee that we've issued money to. And that's why we ask for these things on the 10th. We don't ask for them on the 30th, which is the deadline basically for us. And that's an important distinction because I know sometimes you'll see that in the system saying the 30th, but the 10th is actually the date we need to try to get them from you because it takes us a very long time. There's easily over 200 to 300 every quarter of these reports that have to be compiled. If you do not, we have the ability to put your project on hold. That's the website. We've shown it a couple of times earlier. It's the bjojp.gov website, and that's where you would go. And there's some terms that are in that website, and for purposes of this discussion, you're deemed the subrecipient on this. You're basically a subgrantee, and that's important because that's actually where you would find your project, and I'll show you that in a few minutes. This is what the login page looks like, and before you get to this page, keep in mind that as staff, we basically enter your project into PMT once it is set up for an award. The system, being the PMT system, is then going to send you an email letting you know that you have you have a project assigned to you under the PMT, and at that point you're going to click on that link. If you already have a profile, and many of y'all have, keep in mind PMT started in 2009, so a lot of y'all have been doing this for years. You would just use your current profile and everything that's in the system. If not, you'd have to create a profile. So you end up seeing something like this. Now, this is like a little bit of a dated form, but essentially you're going to get an email from PMT, their side, not from GCC. So keep that in mind. You're going to be looking for one of these. And basically, this is what allows you to click either into your project or to set up your profile, depending on where you are in the system. And you'll put your basic information in, you'll set up some security questions that'll be required, and that'll allow you to set up a password for you to access the system. Once you're able to access it, you'll come to a page similar to this with some blue tabs on the top. But the most important thing to remember on this is the big, bold blue letters that say BJ PMT. Many of you may have grants under VOCA and VAVA, and you'll probably also see something on your profile that says OVC PMT. So remember, it's a similar federal system that's used for multiple grant sources and federal funds across the country. You click on that to start it or continue. More than likely, if you get to this where it says select a profile, you're going to go into the subgrantee profile to find your project. When you get in there, it usually pulls up your profile first just as a way to double check to validate that we're in the right spot with the right person in there. Check the material, check the information on there to make sure everything's correct. If there are mistakes in here or issues, at certain points we can help with those things, but there's also certain points that you have no choice but to go through the BJ help desk because they have total control of the system and we really do not have that. So keep that in mind. The most important thing on this slide is to let you know that there's a timer on PMT. It times out after 30 minutes. So if you are in there working on something, we would encourage you to save it as often as possible so you don't lose your data. But if you don't touch it for a while, it'll time you out and you'll have to relog back into the system. When you're able to get to your project, you'll see something like this. Now, this is just a test model here, but the subaward number is going to be different. For all those who have been doing this with us for the last literally 10 to 12 years, you've had a PROJ number. As you know, we've gone from GEMS to EBS. That PROJ number really is not there any longer. You'll have a longer number, which I guess we're now calling the agreement ID number. So that's probably what you're going to see under your subaward number. That's how you would match up your project with, finding your actual project under this PMT site. And the other thing to remember on this slide is anything that's a red box is where we need you to focus on and try to get that completed. If it's a blue box, it's probably been completed. So that's the thing here. And of course, it's the highlight of the number to the PMT help desk and all that, which we're going to have also on our last slide. 3 statuses are in there that we see from our side as an SAA from where you guys have on your side. Obviously, if it's not complete, we can't do anything with the report. It doesn't help us at all. You could have started it. It's in progress, but until you really get it all the way through every single question and everything's completed and everything's checked off on, it doesn't help us because we can't do anything with that report. So your first couple of pages are going to be general information pages of here. It's going to basically ask you, have you completed all your project activity? Normally you will not answer yes until we're literally at the end of your grant, whenever that may be. And then it's going to ask you, was there grant activity? Often because we have delays in getting awards out, because a lot of things are equipment only, because of how a lot of the JAG grants are structured, a lot of these answers will be no for a while. I mean, you could go 1 or 2 quarters with a no under is there grant activity. That's fine if that's what's happened in your situation. And again, it's all based on timing of when things are given to you guys, when things are issued, and when things are set up on your side also, on your financial side and all that. There's certain tabs that you'll have to click through. Most of the questions are based on how these grants are entered into the system, or these projects, I should say. But you would want to make sure you click through the tabs based on because the tabs determine the questions you will fill out for your particular project. And again, keep in mind, This is an all-purpose system. This was set up for like everything and anything. So it wasn't set up just for law enforcement. It wasn't set up just for equipment. It was set up for a multitude of programmatic type programs, labs, et cetera. It's got a lot of things under this umbrella that this platform carries. You'll see questions about, did you expend JAG funds during the period? You'll see questions about the equipment and, what did you buy? It has some things that you can plug into. These are things you had, and some things you just would have to type in yourself as what the items were. Again, you have a section for goals and objectives. You can pretty much, as long as you put one in here, you're fine. So as long as you have a goal and objective attached to that and update the status of that, you'll be fine. You have the option to add more goals and objectives if you choose to do so, but you have to at least have one in there, again, for the report to even be going through the process where it would deem it as a completed report. Like I said, you have the option there to add another goal, or if you had something you wanted to take out, you have the option to take that out. You get to basically, as you click through all your questions, you'll eventually come upon the review page. This is an important page because this is where you're going to find out, did you miss any questions? Are there things you did not complete, or things you did not fill out? It'll have a not answered section of, and then I have a number attached to that of what was not answered. I will say, after doing this for so many years, the number is not always truly reflective of the number of things you have to click to fix it. Again, everything is based on how a question is answered and what follows up as the follow-up to that. So you may see something that says 47, and that seems like a large number of things you got to go back and figure out. But I can assure you, if you click a certain number of things, 2 or 3 things, that number will drop to 20. Because again, it's based on how questions are answered and what the follow-ups are and the data points that the PMT report is trying to capture. When you get to the bottom of that review page that we were just looking at a second ago, you have to click this little box. It's called Mark Data Entry as Complete. So many times in all the years we've had this system, people will tell me they've completed it, they've filled out everything, and they're good to go. On our side, and this is the reason I want everyone to see this, on our side, if you do not click this box, it will still show it as a not completed report or an in-progress report, and sometimes it'll even say not started. Even though you've done all this stuff and you've punched in a bunch of material, it won't recognize it. You have to click this box to get it basically to lock behind you, and you'll know it's locked behind you because then you'll get the message saying this data entry has been completed. It'll have your name on it. It'll have a date. If you don't see that, then the report is not really validated or certified as done. So you have to do that in order to get this report completed. Once you do that, then your magical red box will turn into the blue box and say complete, and that is the goal you want to see. Any quarters you have any data out there pending, you want to make sure they all are blue at the end of every quarter. Here's some notes that may be helpful. And again, a lot of these things are just avoidable if you just click each box and make sure you hit each tab. It'll have little bubble things like, you can hold the thing over the question. It'll give you some little instructions and clarity of what the questions are. The most important thing to remember is the website itself, which we've now put up there a couple of times, so everyone has it. And again, if you've been doing this since 2009, you know what this is. Second most important thing is the help desk information here for PMT. And it is, it's a national help desk. They got a lot of customers. So it does take a while to get through sometimes, and sometimes it's really, really frustrating. Even for us from the SAA level, I mean, we still have to get in the same queue you guys do to get someone to respond to our questions. Oops. But the reporting status, like I said, unless it's complete, it's not going to count on our side. So please remember, that's the most important thing you want to make sure you have at the end of the process. And the most other important part of the story is these dates. These are the quarters. These are the federal quarters. These are when we need the items back from you guys or the reports submitted by your side. Because if you don't, we literally will find ourselves in a massive scramble trying to do this. And that's, with the sheer volume, that's getting much harder to do that. and it's near impossible to keep up with all those things. So we really need your help to do this, to make sure we can get things back to DC in time, so they don't ping the entire state delinquent because of this, which they can easily do if we don't do this correctly. That's our information, and that's the help desk number again. Just wanted to make sure you had that. Keon Ash is monitoring the chat, and I think he's responding to questions as we've been going through this process. That is like the end of our formal presentation. I want to thank everyone for sitting around with us this afternoon for this information, and we will go from there. So thank you all for your help, and